how do people begin to sort out products if they want to go down the road of microbial inoculants?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably what most people do is Google inoculants on Amazon and buy the first thing, right? There's
Sure.
not really a lot of thought, and I'm happy for those guys. They're doing well. The top of Amazon. I'm on like page 3 now. But one thing that I've always struggled with in the industry, and one of the reasons I made Michael Bloom, first of all, there was no local eco-type products, so nothing for prairie specific. So I wanted to meet that need. I also was just super underwhelmed in the experiments that we did with our lab working with these commercial inocula. Some of them actually were worse than the control trials that we had set up. So the plants did worse with these inocula. And in my career, looking at some of these inoculum, it's just super disappointing because they say things like we have 1,500 papules per gram, and then you actually look what's in that, and it's more like you have 2 papules per gram. Like that's a crazy, crazy, crazy overestimate. And so it's unfortunate that the industry doesn't have tighter regulations. There's not really people looking at these labels in charge of saying you do have these 19 species or whatever at some concentration. So a lot of the stuff that people are selling isn't up to snuff. It's not what they say is on their label. So I think that is a major problem with the industry, and why some people become really frustrated when they buy a mycorrhizal product and it doesn't work, or it works for just a short period of time because it had, nitrogen and phosphorus in it, but that was a temporary thing, and then it doesn't work anymore. Um, so that's really disappointing. And trying to find a product that can work and is viable and at least has something close to what it says it has is a challenge, right? Because you don't have a microscope and 14 years of experience working with, mycorrhizal fungi. It's not a question that many people can answer at home if their product is viable and is what it is. So that's a major challenge.
That's the thing. It's not, I can see it, I can't taste it, I can't smell it. I don't,
No.
like, I'm looking at dust or granules or something, and like it could be dirt or
Mm-hmm.
it could be the best inoculant in the world, and we don't have the
Yeah.
biological equipment to tell the difference. Is it a case of, again, most farmers are the people listening to this, of if people buy food, they connect with their farmer, they know their farmer. So I know how the food's being raised. I can go into any big box grocery store and I can go into an aisle and I see a picture of a farmhouse on something that we all know wasn't produced on a farm like that. And it's just the marketing of it. Where in a case like this, is it do your research and spend some time on some websites and go with your gut, buy from somebody you trust? Because if you just look at the bullet point features and benefits on Amazon, or some of the aggressive names, killer mycos or something like that, right? Like you
They
can
have
get,
some really fun names, some of these products.
they do. The whole
Yeah.
cannabis industry is, I'm jealous
Mm-hmm.
of what they can name
Yeah.
their products.
Hmm. Yeah. And so it is challenging, right? And yeah, it is just such a challenge. What I try to tell people is look at the plant. So with my trials, I can grow a plant in a pot, my control, versus a plant in a pot with my inoculant that I'm testing, whether it be microbloom or if I'm doing, my academic isolates. I can see a response in that plant in as little as 3 weeks. So that's something you can visualize how the plant is responding to that fungi without seeing the fungi. So that is a possibility. And thinking on the larger term scale of farms, I did some work with a local tomato and pepper farmer in Lawrence, Kansas, the past couple of years, and a hemp farmer. And in these trials, we were noticing more tomatoes per plant and ended up having something like 1.5 pounds more tomatoes per plant on average across these sites. So there are some measurable differences. It does take a lot of data to get down to the pound of tomato per plant. Not every farmer is going to do that, and I absolutely understand. But when you're growing your tomato starts, you can see if a tomato is happy and not happy by looking at some of these products. And for some of these products, that could be that unreported, or sometimes they do report it, addition of nitrogen, for example, or phosphorus, whatever, fertilizers they put in there. So that can be a transient thing that's not linked to the microbes. But yeah, it is really a challenge if you don't know what you're looking at.
So that's the other thing. I put it on or I use it, and it's like, well, did it do anything? So
Mm-hmm.
without doing your own kind of, I think a lot of people to get comfortable on this or to scale it up, it's do a control, right?
Yeah.
These plants with this added, it's relatively inexpensive. You're
Mm-hmm.
$24 for, I think that's a 2 pound bag on Amazon. People could get it so they can check it out. Myco Bloom,
Mm-hmm.
MYCO Bloom, or mycobloom.com is the product. So I could do a trial on my own and then, compare it. do does a user potentially also run into the issue that we went back into of prairie restoration? What soil am I dealing with? So I could use the best myco product in the world, but if I'm putting that into a garden that's full of synthetic fertilizers, I might as well not even use it.
Yeah. So the farmer that I worked with at the tomato and pepper trial recently was an organic farmer, right? But he did every week, twice a week, fertilize the plants with, typical USDA approved organic fertilizer methods, pumping it through the irrigation or whatever. And even in this context, with the amount of materials he was applying to those plants, the mycorrhizae did help, even with weekly, twice a week fertilizer. And I would say probably in most gardens, you're not dumping enough of anything to really kill these fungi in the short term. They might not survive for 10 or 15 years if you're constantly fertilizing the soil or tilling the soil, but they can survive a little while. And that brings up, well, then do we have to reinoculate the soil in our farms to maintain these relationships or repair them? And if so, how often? Is it every season, every 2 seasons, every 5 seasons? When do we need that refresher of these beneficial microbes if we're putting them in suboptimal conditions and we expect a decline, such as if we're fertilizing all the time or tilling all the time? Those questions aren't answered yet.
Say we're in a no-till system and say it's a typical garden. I inoculate in my potting mix at the beginning of the year. I plant it out. It gets transferred into the soil. Those microbes and plants thrive. They're doing that synergy. At the end of the season, crops go away. We can assume some spores have been formed. And I'll just say we'll use your location, Kansas, because you're, not too far north, you're not too far south. What would happen? Is there enough spores in the soil to remain there over the winter come spring to reform relationships?
Yeah, I mean, in the prairie, absolutely. They're just hiding out in these dormant long-term perennial roots, right? But if you're thinking about more of an annual ag system, um, yeah, there should be enough. If they go to spore form, they should be safe in the soil. And, mycorrhizae are adapted to soil and the things that happen in soil, even a little bit of freeze thaw. And so they will be able to survive a winter. Sure. Yeah.
How local is local? So I'm in California, you're in Kansas, somebody listening to this is in Maine or Florida. I get a product like Myco Bloom. Am I gonna, if we all planted tomato, are we all gonna get different performance because of our local climate?
Yeah, I would say for most products, that would be totally true because most products are one isolate and it's going to do different things in different places. So I tried to target this by creating this diverse mix so that something can interact with your California soils and something like the hummus in Maine, and so that this product can perform well in a number of different locations. But in terms of like the scientific assessment of how local is local for these AM fungi, we've done some studies looking at fungi from Indiana and how they perform versus fungi from Illinois versus Kansas. And, these are places that are 10 hours away in a car. So pretty local, I'd say. And there are some differences in how these fungi can perform just at that short distance. But the community, if you cross transplant them, can do pretty well in both places.